Thanks for waiting, Emma.
It's okay.
As it happens, Peter, we didn't have much choice. You're the fifth person that made the quorum.
Right,
Thank you for making it.
I didn't think I would.
See, we don't have our mayor this evening. He's amongst our apologies. So can I welcome those 5 councillors who've made it and our various guests, including councillors to be. I think I know who all the apologies are from, but perhaps, Emma, you could just formally go through them.
Yes, I've had apologies from Councillor Hutton, Councillor Fuller, Councillor Glenn, Councillor Robinson, and the long-standing apology from Councillor Sparks.
And do we accept those various apologies? Good. Declarations of interest. I rather suspect there will be one from Councillor Clark.
I'm a resident of St Peter's Road.
Oh, this is Ian Clark here.
And Ian, are you declaring that as a disclosable pecuniary interest or as another interest?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. What should it be? It's certainly disclosable. What's the ruling, Emma? What should I be disclosing it as?
Well, potentially it could be a pecuniary because obviously it affects your property. I'm just worrying about the implications.
The codes while this is going on, if you like.
If Councillor Clark was to declare a pecuniary interest and then seek dispensation, would it be permissible for us to give him dispensation?
I don't know whether you can give it straight at the meeting. I don't know if it has to be given in advance. The dispensation.
If I promise not to vote for anything, is that
This is him. This is Elizabeth. This is Ian Clark. And
should we ask everyone in the audience to mute their iPads, maybe?
Well, the alternative is that you take the view that whether this development goes ahead or not, it won't have an economic impact on the value of your property, in which case it seems to me it would be another interest.
I would declare
I would declare another interest then.
Right.
I agree with that, if you need somebody to agree.
Right. So that gets us past requests for dispensation. Formally, the other 2 items, gifts over the value of £50 or inappropriate gifts. Anybody got anything to declare?
No.
No, good. Public participation from interested parties or members of the public. Now we have a number of members of the public. And it seems to me that probably if any member of the public wishes to speak, probably the logical way of doing it is to take you first, hear what you have to say, and then the councillors will go on to consider such response, if any, as we might make to the consultation. Now I can see that we have 2 immediately former ENC councillors with us, one of whom already has his hand up to speak. And we have David Webb, who lives adjacent to the development site. We have Liz Holland, who is about to become a councillor, and 2 other people, and I'm not entirely sure who they are yet, but they could introduce themselves if they wish to speak. So on that basis, can I perhaps take Jake Vowles first as a former ENC district councillor? But you'll need to unmute yourself.
Done, Chairman. Thank you very much. Not former, we still are district councillors until the new council takes over on Monday. So I can still do a little damage.
I'm sorry to disenfranchise you in that way, but I stand corrected.
We can still do a little damage if we need to. I just wanted to say at the beginning of the meeting that I have consistently voted against the inclusion of this site, both in the local plan and the planning application. at the planning policy meetings over the last 4 or 5 years at ENC, continue to do so, and have obviously heard what Arundel Town Council and the residents have said over the time about their views on this. Like everybody else, I've been given the literature from Linden Homes, Bovis, whoever it might be, and I will be making a response to them. But I'm wholly opposed to this development. But should you, as councillors of Arundel Town Council, make another decision tonight, then I will clearly stand by that. But if you don't, if you go the way I think you will, I'm obviously very much still opposed to the site. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Jake. Does anybody else present wish to speak? Did I see Rupert? Was that your hand up?
Thank you, David, Mr. Acting Chairman. Just to confirm that I'm effectively aligned with Jake's views. I think the site is unsuitable. It will be coming to an NNC Planning Management Committee sooner rather than later, nominally on reserved matters. So I would suggest the Town Council's interests lie in focusing tightly on the reserved matters with a view to speaking spiritedly at the NNC Planning Management Committee from the gallery.
Yeah, well, we take that on board. We have 3 other members of the public present. Do any of you wish to speak? David Webb.
I may. Obviously, as you've mentioned, we do back onto the site, and certainly as 1 or 2 of the councillors are aware, I have always believed that I have a covenant to stop development of this site. It was registered at the same time as the one on Pembroke House. Unfortunately, Gladman's told me that they did not believe that my covenant stood, but Pembroke House's one they obviously did think stood, because I know they paid money to get rid of that. I do keep having a look at the various covenants I've got. I've sent Ian Clark a copy of various bits over the last day or so. Yeah, I will obviously do everything I can to, in any way block or reduce or whatever the proposed development. I'm just about to retire, and what I really don't want is 5 years of builders making lots of noise at the back of my house. But in addition to the covenant that is supposed to stop development of the field, there is also a covenant in relation to the sewerage for both my house and other houses on Cotterstop Road, with the sewerage pipes running through that field. There are access holes in that field, and the covenants, I believe on everybody's property, says that there should be no building within 6 foot of the sewerage pipes. And I think that's something that needs to be, the last thing we want to do is to be, them blocking off access to our sewerage pipes. Now, whether their proposal is that they'll put us into their sewerage, I don't know. Obviously, I would hope that I can somehow enforce the covenant to stop the development, and I've made them aware of this. But as with Gladman's and Richardson's before them, they all just ignore it. I have had advice from a London barrister who was not overly enthusiastic that it would hold, but anything, if there's anything I can do with my covenants to help the council to block this, I will do whatever I can to help. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David. And do either of the other 2 people who appear to be on iPhone and iPad respectively wish to speak, or indeed does Liz Holland? who is about to become an Oundle Town Councillor wish to speak? I see Liz is shaking her head. Do either of the other members of the public wish to speak at this point? On the basis they've stayed mute, I'm going to assume the answer to that is no. It may be that as we go through this as a council, if a member of the public does want to speak, draw that to my attention, and I can always grant a dispensation during the meeting to allow you to do so if I think it's appropriate. Right. Well, since the next item is consideration of requests from interested parties, which seems to me to be on all fours with the next item on the agenda, considering the OTC response, I think we'll move swiftly on to considering the OTC response. That's a response, of course, to the consultation document. And of course, the difficulty from a town council perspective is that the consultation, they are asking for everybody to complete this before the next sitting of a full council. That's why we've got the emergency meeting tonight. Whilst we don't have to make a response, it may very well be that we think that we should. And at this point, I see that Councillor Clark's put his hand up, so I shall defer to him and then to Councillor Peel.
Thank you very much indeed, David. It's just a very simple question. Obviously, this is a consultation from the developer, Vistry Homes, Bovis, whoever they are. Is there any wisdom in the council putting a full response almost as a planning consultation at this stage, or is there any wisdom in holding things back for the full referred matters planning consultation when it becomes official? I think the word I've heard used is it's like getting someone to have your homework marked before handing it in. You know, I don't know what the official line is on such things, so I'm asking your and other people's opinion.
Well, I'd be intrigued to hear what others think about that. I'll go on to Councillor Peel, whose point may or may not be on that, but may have a view anyway.
Well, to be honest, I think the way forward, we've got to look at, if you look at Cotterstock and Glapthorne, I know that they've already sent letters, Cotterstock especially, to the Bovis in response to this, and you know, they've sort of started the ball rolling. The problem I foresee is that we must send, I think, a letter of response, not necessarily saying that you know, it's a bad idea or a good idea, but a letter of response from Oundle Town Council saying that we will refer to the referral meeting and bring a full response and correspondence to that meeting rather than do it before. The reason I say that is because we want to make sure that Cotterstock and Glapthorne and Oundle respond together before the 14th, so that everybody knows that we've done something. And that would actually, I think, make our voice stronger going forward. Whereas if we don't respond before the 14th, you know, it's almost as though the developers have, if you like, divided and conquered before we've even started the battle. So I think maybe some sort of holding letter sent before the 14th of May, so that we can get our a brief point of view over. We don't have to go into too much detail, but if we do that, at least they know that we've considered it, we've looked at it, and that we will take action further down the line.
Thanks, Peter. I'm, as people know, I'm two-hatted, in as much as I'm a councillor for both Oundle and indeed for Glapthorne. And strangely, Liz Holland, who's with us this evening and is about to become an Oundle Town Councillor in her own right, just happens to have a second life as clerk to Glapthorne Parish Council. I think I can probably say this without fear of contradiction. Glapthorne Parish Council is clearly opposed to this development in principle, and I suspect would happily align itself with any position that Oundle might take if that were the view. There isn't a meeting scheduled in time for Glapthorne to put anything formal together, absent an extraordinary meeting which hasn't yet been called, but might be. But I think you can probably be reasonably assured that Glapthorne will be singing from the same song sheet. They put in a fairly strong objection to the outline planning application. They've since, as a matter of information, sought to raise concerns with, originally it was ENC, about the impact on their neighbourhood plan of the grant of outline planning permission for what appears to be potentially 60 houses within the parish of Glapthorne, when its entire allocation from 2011 to 2031 was 38, many of whom had already been constructed or all pretty much on the point of application. It may not surprise you to learn that as yet there has been complete silence from ENC, and although the matter is now being taken up with NNC, unless Liz Holland disabuses me of this, I think the answer is that we haven't actually had a response at all. So there you have it. Glapthorne is definitely, I think, likely to align itself with the approach from Oundle. Peter, you have your hand up again.
Yeah, I know that Jake and Cotterstock are doing something about it before the 14th. I didn't know about Glapthorne. I just thought that probably they would do. But I mean, by the looks of this proposal, you're going to get more than 60 houses in your parish as well, because they're so densely populated. It looks as though you might be maybe in for 70 or even more.
Yeah, well, one of the things, of course, that isn't done is that nobody ever draws the parish boundary line through this development site to make clear exactly what the position is, which I have a feeling I will certainly take up individually as a councillor with Glapthorne, stroke resident of Glapthorne. So we've had a couple of concerns about putting too much information out there in response to this consultation stage. I'd be interested to sound out those councillors who haven't yet spoken. So Councillor Chesser, Councillor Humphreys, as to whether you share that concern about disclosing too much of our hand at this point, whilst perhaps simply acknowledging the consultation and maybe making it clear that Oundle had opposed this application for outline planning permission and that essentially its view hadn't changed. I don't think that would come as any great surprise to them, but it won't disclose a great deal more. Councillor Chesser.
My view hasn't changed. My view has been with the town council all the way. There are a lot of concerns about this.
I totally agree with Peter and everyone else that's spoken. Actually, yeah, we should not show our hand, obviously, because we know with our past dealings with everything with the neighbourhood plan that we shoot ourselves in the foot sometimes. Yeah, we need to send a very strong response to say, we are considering, but not show too much of our intention until the actual event. So I agree with Peter. Yeah, we should send a strong letter and then go from there. Right.
Jake's back with us at the moment, and I'm just going to ask him, wearing his hat as a Cotterstock resident, whether he knows what Cotterstock might be doing, both in relation specifically to this consultation, whether there is some joint response coming from Cotterstock or whether individuals are perhaps going to respond. Jake, are you able to enlighten us?
Absolutely, yes, I'm very involved with it. As of receipt of this leaflet, as you may know, arrived before 7 o'clock in the morning. So that was a pretty good way of pissing off sorry, excuse my French, upsetting a number of people in the village who did not like having their dog banged at early in the morning. And so last Thursday, we talked to the chairman of the village committee. He has put a letter around to all residents. He will put a formal response in by May 16th, objecting to the site, recognizing that outline planning permission has been granted, that we ought to be able to influence things like the access. We obviously, as a village, see the road junction in the dip and the bend between the sewage farm and Mr. Webb's house rather more regularly than most Oundle residents, and it is considered to be extremely dangerous. And during lockdown, there are considerably more people walking, cycling, on motorbikes, on cycles, on horses and whatever going past there. And there's a lot of concern in the village about that. So you can expect that the village formally put a response in saying they object, particularly on the subject of the access of the Cotterstock Road, the sewage farm proximity, and will remind the developers that in the consultation for the local plan, Anglian Water objected to this site on the grounds of both proximity and the need for them to expand their facility if there were more houses in Oundle, and also on light pollution and the impact of the springs from the top of the hill, which run through and come out in this village, which we see as we walk along the footpath at the bottom, and the impact on the Ramsar site. I think it's a Ramsar site at the bottom alongside the river. So you can expect. I will also put in the concern of the residents of St. Peter's Road regarding the tree that grows in the middle of the road, which is considered by many to be a bat roost. And I have been battling with apparently a non-existent bat officer at ENC and at the county level, because if that is a bat roost, then they have to put in some significant mitigation before they can move that tree. And I think most of that end of St. Peter's Drive will be watching men with chainsaws if they turn up to take it out of the way. But yes, you can be assured that Cotterstock will respond. I hope that somebody has done something similar with Glapthorne.
Thank you very much, Jake. That's very helpful. People may know that quite apart from the two hats that I'm wearing, I have a third hat as well, because I'm currently chairing the Rural Coordination Group, which of course involves various parishes around Oundle. And it's very disappointing that this has come out with so little time in reality to put together a coordinated response, because it simply isn't going to be practical to call a meeting of that group and agree a response from the group. However, be assured that I intend to bring the fact of this consultation and the impending application to the group with a view to the group itself, hopefully responding to the application when it actually goes into NNC. Talking of residents of St. Peter's Road, Councillor Clark circulated certainly to members of the town council some rather interesting survey results that have been put together in relation to that. And I'm wondering whether there is any intention from the residents of St. Peter's Road to kind of make a St. Peter's Road representation, perhaps based somewhat around that consultation effort. Ian, are you able to enlighten us as to how that might be taken forward, if at all?
Yes and no is probably a fair answer. I have, as Neville Chamberlain said, I have the paper here. It's now extended to 6.5 pages, which is pretty exciting. I think a lot of people who are residents have responded to the consultation, but I think a lot of people are aware as well of the initial question I asked, is this the right forum to raise too many technical issues that might then be solved before it goes before North Northants planning, and whether some of them are best held back for that. So what eventually may or may not get sent off from here might depend on the answer to that question, which might also depend on the town council's response. If we're going with a sort of holding letter strategy, then I'd imagine a number of residents will put in holding responses to this, saying that they'll raise their full concerns once it goes to North Northants, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think there's a risk that we're kind of damned if we do and damned if we don't here. If we don't seem to put in our arguments, somebody will later say, yes, but you didn't raise that at the first opportunity when you could have done during the consultation phase. And if we put it forward now, you're right, they have a chance to react. Emma, you had your hand.
I'm just wondering, does then Jake or Rupert, do you have any idea when this is going to come before the North Northants committee?
Rupert, you look as if you might be able to help. Well, both of you look as if you might be able to help. Either of you.
Thank you, David. Can I bat first?
Yes.
And then Jake can follow on. Short answer is I don't know. However, I'm already arranging soon after the election as possible, early next week, to meet the 3 incoming Northamptonshire councillors for the Oundle division at my house to alert them to these 2 problem planning cases, namely this Cotterstock Road one we're talking about tonight, and the other one off St Christopher's Drive, to encourage them to try and ensure that at least one of them gets onto the appropriate North Northamptonshire Planning Management Committee, or if that can't be done, to arrive fully briefed to speak from the gallery. And in relation to that, addressing the question that town councillors are discussing, whether the town council shows its full hand now or reserve it, my recommendation would be get a representation in to Northamptonshire Council planning officers, PDQ, and in parallel, as more a matter of courtesy than anything else, respond to the developers' consultation, because this will give Northamptonshire Council planning officers the chance to give their minds and their professional planners to the very relevant points that are exercising all of us.
Jake, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think I would say we don't know. What we don't know is which of the 2 new planning committees this application will go in front, because North Northamptonshire will have 2 planning committees in the future, which they have not established yet. Obviously, they haven't got the councillors in place. One for larger infrastructure projects and one for regular planning matters. And I think 130 houses, one could argue it in both ways as to who would actually take it. So I don't see it happening before June or July at the very earliest, probably after the summer break, but whichever committee it is. But if Rupert, I hope, would include in his briefing the 3 councillors who will be elected for Thrapston, because those 3 councillors will represent Cotterstock and Barnwell and some of the other villages. I'm not sure where Glapthorne lies, Stoke Doyle and others that actually are impacted by this, as impacted as the town council, the new Northamptonshire councillors for Oundle itself.
Thank you, Jake. I see, Rupert, you have something further to add. I'm going to let you do so.
Thank you, David. Responding to Jake, yes, indeed, I will widen the circle to make jolly sure that the incoming councillors for the Thrapston division are included, and also I will find out from NNC officers who particular officers are who are handling it, to whom the town council's representation should go, and also which of the 2 new committees are likely to handle it. So it could be either one.
Thank you, both of you. That might assist us going forward. Peter, and then I think Ian.
Right. So if we're going to do, and I'm hoping that this will be done. I mean, obviously the new council comes in on the 7th or 8th or 10th of May, I think. I'm not sure what date it is in actual fact. If we're going to do a holding letter, we might. I understand about these sort of possibilities of not putting stuff in there that might be held against us in the future. But we could actually put something in about the fact that Cotterstock Road was in the local plan, and the local plan has not been approved yet. It hasn't gone through examination, and so therefore is not something that we should be looking at. But the neighbourhood plan, which went through referendums in Oundle, was accepted by the people of Oundle, and we want to make sure that Oundle's opinions are more brought forward than the ENC have done. So I would say to you, we've still got to do a holding letter, maybe put it a little bit more powerful, but I wouldn't actually sort of show our hand until these matters go to the planning committee, because all we're going to be doing, and so rightly as Ian said, is if we show our hand too far in front, and David I think said the same, they're going to know what we're going to be complaining about, and they will dodge the answers and put something else in its place to make it appear as though they've done the right thing, but we know that they won't have done. So I think we should sort of, I say, just do the holding letter, do something with some sort of reference to the past, the local plan and the neighbourhood plan, and the concerns of St Peter's having it, but don't go too harsh and show too many things that we think are wrong with that particular site. I mean, obviously I'm leaving the council in the next couple of days, so it's up to the new councillors and the existing councillors staying to bring all that forward. But I just think that maybe you might have a better chance of blocking it further down the line than you will by sending a simple letter now.
Thanks, Peter.
I was just going to touch on something you said briefly. We've sort of split the notes of what people have said into specifics, but then also 8 broad points. So maybe a halfway house from local residents, and also from the council will be to have a holding letter with just the 8 headings. Broad, sewage, maybe the ineffectiveness of the consultation format, because there are questions have been asked and not been answered, and then the specific details might go to a Northants at a later date. So at least we've got the broad headings out there.
Yeah, I suppose one thing we could do, slightly taking the point that Rupert Reichold has made, is that we could certainly send a copy of the letter through to NNC, so that they are made aware from the outset of our response to the consultation. Now, there wouldn't be an awful lot of point if it were an utterly holding letter, but if it has a certain amount of substance behind it, we might take that view. Peter.
I just think that if that's, and I agree with Ian, I think that's right, but I think you've got to do it. You've got to do it before the end date on this. You can't sort of, allow it to run to the next council meeting, for instance, which I think is in June. It'll be too late. You've got to make a decision of what you're going to do tonight and get the letter sent off.
Oh,
Sorry to be so pushy.
No, there's no doubt about that. That's why we've got the meeting tonight, because our next full council meeting, at which we would welcome our new councillors, including Liz Holland and Rupert Reichold, won't meet until after this consultation date has ended. And quite frankly, I have no doubt at all that if the town council submitted a response to the consultation outside of those consultation dates, it will very definitely end up in the bin and not be looked at by anybody. So it will definitely need to go in. Before we close down this evening, we'll have a more or less broad strategy, I think, agreed in relation to a way forward. Rupert, you had your hand up a minute or two ago. Was there something that you wanted to add?
Yes, please, David, certainly. It is important that the town council's letter submission to North Hants council officers should be very clear-cut and specific, because it is the planning officers who will prepare the briefing for the committee. And also, in terms of any broad considerations that I think Peter Peel reckoned it'd be helpful to mention, regrettably, I think there'd been no value in attempting to hang our hat on the neighbourhood plan, since that has, on a technicality, has been ruled inadmissible. As for the fact that the examination public on the local plans was to take place, again, regrettably, the difficulty is that once the planning commission outline has been given, the council cannot then reverse itself and withdraw it. The only person who could do that, I suppose, would be the Secretary of State, and he's shown no signs of doing so. So I think really representations to be addressed in parallel to North Hants council planning officers, and also a polite acknowledgement mentioning concerns to the developer, should hang their hat on basics, namely sewerage, water supply, excessive growth and access.
Yes, I take your point about the fact that outline permission has been granted. Of course, in order to develop it, they will need a full permission. And if there are practical difficulties in relation to a full permission because of issues such as the impact of the sewerage works, such as the impact of the pipe work that perhaps is underneath it, the drainage issues that I'm well aware Anglian Water were flagging up as long ago as the 1986 Oundle local plan. My knowledge, I'm afraid to say, stretches back that far, which is now, what, 35 years ago. So yes, we can't hope that as a result of what we say, the outline permission goes away. What we might be able, of course, to do is to make it difficult to grant a full permission, or certainly difficult to grant a full permission that would be acceptable to the developer. If, for the sake of argument, it transpired that the number of homes that could be put on this site was slashed because of some of these practical issues that have been referred to, then of course it may or may not put the entire development with a great big question mark. So I think the way that this is shaping up is that we do want to respond. We perhaps don't want to put together a 20-page technical argument about each and every single aspect and send it through to BOVID. But we will flag up some primary points. We will make that information available to NNC. We will certainly stress to NNC that a much more detailed analysis of a final application when it's submitted will be made, doubtless expanding upon and maybe adding to what we've indicated in this initial letter of consultation. Now, assuming that that is the approach that we're going to take, and before I continue, I see Peter, you've got your hand up, so come in, please.
I think that's exactly right, David. What I would do I mean, if I was, I'm not going to be writing a letter because obviously I'm quite busy tomorrow and Friday. You probably know why. But I would say that yourself and Ian, because he's got the 8 points there that he talked about earlier, could actually put something together. And you two are still on the council after tomorrow as well. So it would be coming from the deputy mayor as is, if you like, and a well-known person on the council. I would personally hold fire on the covenants of David Webb's, because I think that could be very useful in the future. I think that could actually help with objections further down the line. That's a very useful weapon to keep your powder dry.
Some paracetamol in there.
Councillor Humphreys.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I mean, I think we need to, have the broad points are exactly what we need to go, and also we should perhaps keep dry what Jake was saying about the bats in that tree, and that's the sort of thing that can scupper. It's almost as if you went on the site and buried a Saxon helmet on the site. You'd scupper the whole thing completely so that the environmental, the bat thing, and certainly the David's sewage problem could be things that we hold back, but a broad approach. And I think what I'm talking to you, David, as well, is as chair of the rural committee, could you could you send a letter in on their behalf without consultation, without having spoken to any of the members of the outlying villages? Could you put something in as chair of that committee?
I suspect I could write it as the chair of the committee, but it would have to be written by me in a personal capacity, because I really don't think I could presume to speak on behalf of the group, even if I have a fair idea as to what its response might well be. But I think that might presume a little too much. But I could do that in a private capacity and indicate that I do that. Also with the knowledge of being a current Glapthorne resident and somebody who used to live in a property that backed onto this very development.
I mean, I think that
so I
might
can speak
help
with a fair amount of personal knowledge.
Yeah, I think that might help to know that they've got every single village around the whole of Oundle is against this, or they're going to have to fight a bigger fight than they think they're going to have to on this one. If that was the case, if you could do that.
Emma.
I'm just thinking, the rural coordination group doesn't have the restrictions that councils do. So we could potentially put an email out to everybody and just see how they felt by email before you wrote on their behalf. I think that probably would be better.
What we could do, just excuse us whilst Emma and I have this little debate, if you could produce the minutes of this meeting, but circulate it to our circulation list of the Rural Coordination Group, with perhaps a request from me as chair that if at all possible and within the consultation period, they could provide some feedback to you. It may be, as you observe, that we could then put in something that could be said to come from the group as a group, rather than from me as an individual who just happens to be the chair of that group. So that, yes, that's a valid point. Picking up on Peter's point about drafting the letter, of course, I have the advantage. I also sit as the chair of the council's planning committee. I've written numerous responses to planning applications, including, of course, helping with putting together the response that the town council made to the outline permission. If Councillor Clark is willing to perhaps work with me following tonight's meeting, the two of us could produce a draft. We could circulate it amongst those councillors who've attended this evening, really just to get a bit of feedback and to make sure that we're not going off completely off piste in the way we're doing it. And if what you say is that, broadly speaking, you're happy with it, then that could become the response that we send. David Webb, you've got your hand up, I think.
It's just that Clive had said about withholding my covenant. I'm afraid I already shot the bolt on that, in that I have already notified Vistry that I do have a covenant, or I believe I have a covenant. So that, yeah, they are aware of that. So I'm afraid, sorry, I can't withhold that now.
Well, I think that would be that's fine, but it's perhaps there's a way of bolstering your the covenant argument when it comes in later on.
I would say as well, I agree with Clive there. I don't think there's a problem there, David, because obviously you've got the covenants. I just thought it could be a much stronger argument later on as well.
Well, I think one of the points about that is that, strictly speaking, private covenants aren't necessarily a planning issue, but what they are is a distinct legal issue for a developer who might become slightly concerned that somebody is claiming that they've got the power to impact their development. And it could be that if we say anything, it is simply that we have been made aware by a local resident that he has already drawn their attention to the existence of covenants about X, Y, and Z, indicating that perhaps we think that they should be taking some notice of that. And that's something that we could do. And I think it would be compatible with the council's aims, and not just simply favouring a particular parishioner with a particular private battle, so to speak, because I think our interests are aligned as far as that's concerned. It seems to me that we are moving towards a point where we can perhaps wrap this up, but Peter, I think you were...
I was just saying, if you're going to use covenants, then I think the stronger ones would be Anglia Water, because they've got the pipe running through the site.
Yeah. Okay, well, again, it's a question. We have no shortage of ammunition. It just comes down to
just how much you want to use,
how much we put in at this particular stage, and it's something that will doubtless exercise Ian and I as we try to put something together. I'll probably try to put a first draft together. I've seen the document that Ian emailed out the other day. It may be that it's been expanded since then considerably from the look of it. No doubt, Ian, you can email it through to me all over again. And if I can get a chance to have a look at that, we'll try and work on something over the next few days, trying to ensure that we are well within the actual timescale. Does anybody else have any contribution to make, whether a councillor or whether a non-councillor? It would seem not. Well, that was the business of the meeting. The only other item is any other relevant matters for report only. I suspect it's unlikely that councillors have any other wider issues to mention. But if there is any, oh, there is. Councillor Clark.
Well, it's not. It's just a question. It's a question to Emma, actually. Do we need to propose and vote on that we're going to send a letter, or are we okay with a consensus?
Emma, you're still muted.
But the shake of the head.
That's fine. You don't have to have a proposal if you're all agreeing.
Fantastic. That's
Not
great.
spending money or something, is it?
Yeah, but it's not that kind of a proposal.
No, that's fine.
Right.
Just checking.
Just quickly to everybody, I think this is, as I'm leaving the council, I'm sort of I'm now being fired up as I'm leaving for another battle. And the thing that strikes me is if we have to go at this very with the strength, I think, and fight this one, because as I've said before at meetings, if this goes through, then it opens a floodgate for the whole of Glapthorne Road, all the way down into Glapthorne and everywhere else. I know that all that land is already bought and is already banked, and it's already primed to be housing development. But if we don't fight adequately and with vigor now, we are going to be there will be one huge Weldon estate built on our doorstep, and the whole structure of Oundle, everything that Oundle stands for, will completely change. And I'd rather, keep the battle going for the things that we really need, which is a vibrant festival, a vibrant inner town market, all the things that make the town beautiful, rather than vast slums of the future sprawling out across the fields around it. Let's try and make them understand that the jewel in the crown of which is Oundle is protected, and we have an art centre, we have the bridge done, we have the walkthroughs, we have everything that we admire about the place is sustained and not just written over. Because in 30 years, 50 years time, they'll be saying, oh, I wish I'd never done that. I wish I'd never bought all those houses there. I wish that hadn't happened. I wish they hadn't pulled down that building. Exactly the same as we do when we look back at the 60s. So it's a very important battle, and I feel quite sort of fired up about it again now. So
Looks like it
probably
too.
done the wrong thing.
Such a shame, Clive, that you weren't fired up in this way at the point nominations were required for the new town council. But never mind. Thank you. I think that perhaps if we needed any inspiration to drive on, I think Clive has perhaps provided it this evening. And I would like to thank Clive. I know I thanked him last night as chair of the planning committee when he attended our planning meeting, but I'm going to thank him again tonight. From the chair for all the work he's done on the council whilst he's been with us. It's been a valuable contribution. You'll be much missed, but I'm sure that you'll still involve yourself in a lively way with the town, and I'm sure that you won't be shy of perhaps offering words of advice to us if you think we need them. Right. Oh no, I was about to say in the absence of anything else, but Peter, you've got your hand up. Is there some sort of conspiracy to stop me wrapping this meeting up?
No. The only thing I'd like to say is that I'm again, like Clive, I'm leaving, as you know, and I sincerely hope that the 5 that are staying with the 5 new people coming on can fight as hard as we have done over the last 5 years to try to keep Oundle on the footing that we are now, and that I sincerely hope that you all succeed in what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much for that, Peter. And again, I thank you for all your contributions to the town over the last however many years it's been. Again, a valuable contribution and some useful words to spur us on as I think I'm going to try and wrap up this particular meeting now. So can I thank all councillors for their attendance, but particularly thank the members of the public who have joined us and those who've contributed in particular. Thank you so much. And Ian, I dare say that emails will be pinging their way backwards and forwards between us as ever.
I'm about to start writing.
Right. Thank you, Emma, for chairing the meeting tonight. And this is the final meeting of the current council. I think it might well be the one that has turned up closest to an election that I can practically remember for a long time. So for all those involved, thank you so much. See you.
Good luck, Peter, tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.